Welcome. Thanks for attending the Not Done Yet podcast, and welcome to Galaxy House. I think you've been here more than me.
I have. I have been here before, and thank you so much for having me today. What a real pleasure this is.
Yeah, and I've been learning a little bit about your business, but I can't wait to dig in and learn more about your past and where you're going and where you've come from. So can we go right back to the beginning, if that's okay? Because
Sure.
I think you've got a great story. If we go right back to like where you started and wherever you feel comfortable with, like your career and your life.
Oh, well, let's see. I was born in Augusta, Georgia. Okay, we won't go quite that far back.
You can if you
want. Let's go back to school. So I'm an electrical engineer from the University of Texas, and NASA put me through college. That was quite awesome. I worked at Johnson Space Center, Building 1 in Houston. And then I was in corporate for a number of years and then left and joined my first startup, which was a semiconductor startup in the late 90s. And that turned into a new startup, which eventually sold to Apple. So that was quite cool.
So what position did you take at that first one?
So that first one, well, you know, the great thing about startups is that you have multiple roles.
Yeah.
So I actually joined a startup that failed, I don't know, 6 months later maybe. And that was the best lesson because I actually got to see what happens when a startup fails, right? And what's the wind down process look like? And it was the formulation of rule number 1. Never run out of money.
Yeah. That's usually one of the main deaths of a startup is capital. Yeah.
Yes. So that particular company was the genesis. So we had a design center in California and a design center here in Austin, Texas. And so that was the genesis of a new startup company. We founded it as EVSX. And it's a secret as to what that stands for, but I'm sure somebody can tell you. And we renamed it to Intrinsity. So I had a dual role there. I was both managing our verification efforts and also marketing. So there you go.
So you were in the sort of marketing role, but you studied electrical engineering yourself.
Yes, but I was also in an engineering role.
Okay.
Because verification is the engineering part of does it work?
Okay. Is it kind of QA or is it more than that?
No, it's a lot more than that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the in semiconductors, verification is the stuff that happens before you spend millions of dollars actually making it.
Yeah. The struggle I have when I run startups is that I'm in product, so I'm the one designing it and developing it a lot of the time. And when you're doing that and you then have to communicate to someone, you sometimes have to hold back what's not ready yet. So there's always that, for me, there was always that temptation like, oh, but this is really cool, this is coming soon, but you can't really talk about it. Did you find the same thing in marketing?
Yeah, in fact, we always used to spend a lot of time training a lot of our engineering team in the 2 rules of marketing, right? Rule number 1, never tell them everything you know.
Okay, what's number 2? Oh, there we go. You got me. I like it.
The funny thing is once you've done that, you don't forget it.
Yeah.
And that's actually super important, especially for entrepreneurs, especially for engineers, because we think everybody else is so, excited by the things that we're doing that we are. And of course they're not. They're like, God, would you shut up?
Mm-hmm. When I talk to a lot of startups, one of the biggest problems they have is that understanding the value proposition that they're giving to people. And sometimes when you are in product or when you're making the thing, it's hard to separate the cool things it does, the features, the functionality, into something that's actually marketable based on that value proposition.
Yeah, that's very true. And also that recognition that to the user, in our case, the wearer, that value proposition is different than it is if you're actually selling to an investor. The value proposition is very different there, right? And so sometimes, it was always really hard for me, especially for this company, pulling back on the product descriptions when I was fundraising, because the product descriptions were the reason that we're able to do what we're doing on an investor side. But in the end, they didn't care.
I totally agree. Like, there's many times where I'll be doing a Zoom call with an investor, and I'll have the product open up here, and I have this and this, and I'll find myself not even touching those things, not even demoing those things. But I want to, because that's what we're proud of. I feel like there is you need to have to sell what you do and find a market. But when you build the thing, you're proud of. Not everyone can do this.
Right.
What we've achieved. So you did that, and then what was next after that company?
That's
Apple, did it?
Yeah, that's the one that sold to Apple. They were called Intrinsity at the time of the sale.
Why did Apple acquire that?
So if you remember the first generation of the iPads, right? Nobody knew what an iPad was going to do, what it was for.
Yeah.
They had no real purpose in life.
Yeah.
But the one thing that everybody kept saying is, God, did you see the graphics?
Yeah.
So those graphics were actually the technology that we had developed at Intrinsity.
Yeah.
It was actually a particular type of semiconductor design technology. It's super nerdy stuff, but the bottom line was, with that capability, it was perfect for high compute data paths. So graphics, speech, audio, AI, okay? And at the time of the acquisition, I think we had like 170 patents or something on that technology. And so, Apple had done some work with Intrinsity, doing basically the design of the graphics data path of what was the chip behind the iPad. And it did so much better than they expected that they bought the company, which is a normal Apple way of buying.
Yeah, I remember, excuse me, when the iPads first came out, and we were all like, because I'm a massive Apple fan. I've been an Apple fan before it was cool to be an Apple fan, having black and white screen Macs and stuff like that. But when the iPad came out and people were walking in London with it on their face like this, it's like, I said, I want one. I don't know what I'm going to use it for, but it's not that. It's not what that dude's doing right now. So that sold. So did you stay with them for a bit, or was that?
So actually, I left before the sale. I went and did a stint at another semiconductor company for a little while, and then started a new company called Luminary Micro, semiconductor company again. We were the lead partner in the development of ARM Cortex microcontrollers. So for people who are nerdy, you're going to know what that means, and if you're not, it's currently a $128 billion market. So this was a big, hairy deal in the semiconductor and design world, what we did at Luminary Micro. I started it in 2004 and sold it in 2009. So TI bought that one after the acquisition by Texas Instruments. I stayed on for a couple of years, and then I retired in 2011.
Okay. And so you retired because you're like, I'm good now. I've done that. It seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah, well, and also, I mean, that was a big part of my whole plan. Was I was gonna, build these companies, make enough money, retire early, and scuba dive, right? Because it's one of my passions.
Okay.
And so, actually, when I started Luminary Micro, my biggest thing, I wanted to be retired by 45. And as it turned out, it was 47. And it was like, gosh, I'm close enough to 45 that if I start this company, I'm not going to be allowed to retire by 45. I'm going to miss my goal. And then I decided it was okay. So that's what I did.
So you did scuba diving, like, where do you go for that? You went abroad, or you?
Well, I mean, I dive all over the world, but when I retired, actually in 2011, I was a dive master on a liveaboard dive boat. So we were based in Key West, Florida. Yeah. We dove the Dry Tortugas, the Bahamas, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico. And at the time that I left and also started my current company, Unaliware, they had the first U.S. permit to dive Cuba.
Nice. What were people diving in Cuba? What was there to see?
Well, actually, it's in pretty good shape. In Cuba. So it's pretty good diving for Caribbean diving.
So what makes it, when's it not good? What's not good? The clarity or something?
Gosh, when it's not good. Too much development runoff, right? Fertilizer, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Did you ever do any kind of like wrecks or anything like that?
Sure.
They always excite me.
Yeah. And also deep diving.
Yeah.
So I have a rebreather. So, my deeper dives are in the 350-foot range.
Wow. That would scare me a bit. I used to live in Qatar when I was a kid. I did some diving there, and I used to go. I'm from the Europe area, and so we used to go to Malta. I never went scuba diving in Malta, but there's a lot of wrecks and planes and stuff in there. I'd love to have done that.
Yep.
That shallower diving is more my thing. The deep stuff is freaky, I think.
Well, if you want to combine deep and wrecks, there's always Truk Lagoon or Chuk Lagoon, right, in Micronesia.
I don't know. You
The
should tell me.
Federated, well, see on the U.S. side.
Yeah.
So during World War II, basically at Truk Lagoon, that's what we call it. Chuk is actually the name, but in February of 1944, I think I want to say, we actually did a 2-day bombing in Truk Lagoon. That was basically Pearl Harbor to the Japanese. So their entire merchant marine fleet was there, and we pretty much sunk it all.
Oh wow,
It's an incredible number of wrecks there.
Is it deep?
Some of them are, yes.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So you had your own boat that you were like diving off of with a team.
Well, I didn't own the boat. I worked on the boat.
You worked on the boat, and you were like, okay. Did you kind of like? Because whenever I go on vacation, that's when and about a week in, my brain can relax, and then new ideas start coming in. So is that kind of what happened to you? You sort of like got relaxed, or was there something? It was an impetus that made you want to do the next thing.
There was definitely an impetus. Actually, I suspect. Well, I wouldn't be still on that boat because because of the first U.S. permit to dive Cuba that sold that boat. But I suspect I would still be doing that kind of diving. Except what happened was my mom turned 80. And she wasn't willing to wear one of those medical alert pendants. And the thing about my mom is she's not with us anymore, but she was a model all my life. Lucky me, I am the spitting image of my dad's sister. So my mom, very tall, very slender, you can see this is not me. And so, she very kindly, when she turned 80, she was skinny to begin with. She got skinnier, right? She got a little shorter, right, through, osteoporosis and all of that. So in the medical definition, she actually was becoming frail. And she lived independently, and I wanted her to keep doing that. Right? For as long as she wanted to, whatever she wanted, that's what I wanted. But I wanted her to be safe. So, I had the discussion with her. I sat down as an engineer, created a spreadsheet of all of the different solutions that were in the market. There was a pendant with a red button and another one with a blue button. And the very first of the passive monitoring systems where you had cameras that would be looking at you in your home. It takes a special person to be willing to put up with that.
Yeah.
But anyway, Mom was very great. She was very gracious and allowed me to go through the whole spreadsheet. And then when I got done, she sits back and she goes, "Don't you get that for me? I'm not wearing it." And I was like, holy moly. Because, it was that look on her face. When you're a kid and you're in trouble all the time?
Oh, that was me.
That was totally me too. But I hadn't seen that look in decades.
Yeah.
Until
She
that
meant
day.
business.
So she truly meant it. And I left her apartment kind of going, a little taken aback at the strength of her reaction, the negative strength of her reaction. And then as I was driving back from San Antonio to Austin, I was like, I kind of get it, because I'm not going to wear a pendant, and I'm just a nerd, and I'm definitely not the style mavin that my mom was. Why would I expect her to do that?
So was it a psychological thing for her, or was it a style thing, or a bit of both? I mean, did she feel like if she gave in to that a medical style device, that it felt like it was invading in her life? Did you get a sense of what that was?
I mean, I think, in the interim, I've talked to thousands of people. A part of it is the stigma, right? A part of it is the style issue, right? And so kind of when you put those together, those marketing slogans, effective marketing usually either ties to fear or it ties to sex. Okay, so we're not going to tie to sex in this market. Okay, so we're going to tie to fear, and that's where the slogan is that everybody knows. But the problem with that is that creates then this negative society perception, right? And the thing that people don't realize is that when you're old, you don't actually think you're old, right? And I was talking to a friend of my dad's one day. This guy had gone to college with my dad in 1940 something, and he's telling this story about some trouble they got into at the University of Texas. They'd stolen something, like stealing the Terminex bug. And I'm looking at this guy. He's 83, totally white hair, he's short, and he's telling this story, and it's like, he does not believe he's 83. And that's actually true of almost all of us.
Yeah.
And so when you give somebody something stigmatizing, you're setting them up to have to see themselves differently than the way that they see themselves. You look in the mirror and you're 80 and you still see 60-year-old you. You're 40, you still see 25-year-old you, right? It doesn't change. So even though you're looking at them and you're like, "Oh my God, you're old," they're looking at themselves going, "I am not as old as they are. They should get help, but I don't need it."
Yeah, you don't understand your limitations. And I'm not 80, I'm 38. But I do some sports. I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I hurt my back 2 weeks ago, and it's still killing me. Yeah. And that's because I'm not bouncing back as quickly as I would have done.
Right.
And I fight younger guys. I'm like, man, they're just so... I could always improve my fitness, but there's definitely an age thing that you do notice, and that's at just under 40. That I feel like, no, I should be like this. That's what falling over feels like. I used to skateboard a lot as a kid. I fell over all the time, but now when I fall over, when I drink, I feel it. I feel it for longer than I used to. I'm like, but I'm not believing that. Like, it doesn't connect to my head. I'm just like, oh, I must have been a heavier night than normal. I just must have got hurt more. But no, it's your body that's getting older. Taking a second.
And even when you say, "Oh, I must be getting older," you're actually not really believing it in your heart, and that's where a big part of that comes in. And so, after that conversation with my mom, like you do when you got stuff going on in your life, you talk to your friends, and a lot of my friends were co-founders with me in previous companies and people who worked with me in previous companies. And eventually we came up with a concept for a smartwatch that you could actually keep charged all the time. You never took it off. And so to set the stage here, this is 2013. The Apple Watch didn't exist. Mm-hmm. The iWatch was rumored.
And there was Garmin's at the time, right?
Yeah, you had
but
Garmin's were only sports watches.
Yeah,
right.
But I'm just thinking about wearables. What we had then, so we had Garmin's. We didn't have Apple watches.
We had Polars.
Yeah.
Right. Again, a sports watch.
Yeah. No Whoops. No.
No.
There was nothing much else. Fitbit, maybe? Fitbit?
We had Fitbits.
Yeah.
Yep. And in fact, at the time, the Fitbit Flex was the newest thing. So the Fitbit that had kind of the flexible battery and the little band.
Oh, that was quite cool looking. I think I had one, actually. Yeah, a black thing that kind of, I remember that, yeah.
And one of the things that came out of Fitbit was what we used to call the Fitbit problem.
Okay.
You get your Fitbit, you're super excited, you're checking the app, how am I doing on sleep, and am I working out, and all of this stuff. And then you take it off to charge, and it never comes back on again.
Oh, really?
That was the Fitbit problem. 3 months was the average usage by a user. Mm-hmm. And then they just never put it back on. And so that's why it became, when we came up with a way to keep our watch on 24/7, truly 24/7, that was when I said, okay, this is something we have to do. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't about building a smartwatch. I don't care about smartwatches. I mean, I have a Garmin. But it was more about the fact that if I could actually give you a watch that was actually a medical alert watch that truly stayed on 24/7, then that meant that I could protect you from falls in the bathroom at night. Number one cause of injury, death among seniors. Mm-hmm. And so everybody who talks about, everybody else in the industry talks about the fact that they have 24/7. They don't, because you take it off to charge. By definition, that's not 24/7. And so worst of all, from the Apple perspective of things, is to take it off at night to charge, because that's when my demographic is most vulnerable.
Yeah, and even hopefully you don't fall in the first place. But if and when you do, and you're fine, hopefully, the injuries you sustain can actually lead to mortality in a very short period of time with elderly people. If you have a fall, So I've seen that myself. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much any of us who have older people in their lives, older loved ones, I mean, you get it. The question is, what is it that you do about it? Mm-hmm. And so you have to solve two problems, right? You have to solve the problem. What do you do about falls? And don't have the Fitbit problem. Don't let them take it off. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then the second one is, how do you solve the human problem? Can't be ugly, can't be stigmatizing, must be absolutely simple to use. And must understand that the only difference between old people and young people is can't see, can't hear. Oh, and by the way, they can't touch because they're chronically dehydrated. So they lack the galvanic skin response that powers touch. So if you've ever seen an older person, my age, with their phone and their fingers just like wailing away, touching the phone, and they're like, this thing never works. If they just lick their finger, it would be okay.
I didn't know this.
Most people don't.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
But if for anybody who remembers the early days of Clear, the first time Clear existed, they were only fingers, 3 fingers. And right next to every Clear terminal was this great big jug of lotion. And the reason was you'd go to put your fingers on the pad, and if it didn't register, they'd get the lotion and they'd squirt this big gob of lotion in your hand so that you had enough moisture to actually make the touch work.
Interesting.
That's what they were doing. But nobody ever put that together with what we do in touch screens for, phones, for Apple Watches, right?
Yeah. I mean, I saw touchscreen get a lot better. I was a geek. I used to work for Sony Ericsson when that was a thing, and you needed styluses to really get the touch. And Apple seemed to nail better touchscreen technology, but that's obviously not going to help in this example anyway.
Right.
So you had the idea, and you had the driver that your mother, was a. Mm-hmm. There must be more people like my mum that need this type of thing, and you talked to other people and sort of somewhat validated it. So you thought, let's do this. Let's get off this diving boat. How did that next bit go?
Yeah, so actually, I called Mom up a couple of weeks after that first meeting and said, hey, Mom, how about if we make you a watch and you talk to it and it talks to you? What do you think about that? And my mom, she goes, I'd throw it out the window. And I said, great, Mom, you're hired. Your job is to make sure that we build something that you won't say that. And so actually, Mom was our senior user experience advisor. It was our joke, right? She was our senior user experience advisor, and she was our senior user experience advisor. So she had cards. She had business cards at the age of 80.
I love it.
She gave them out to everybody. She was personally responsible for over the first 100 people of the 400 people who came through our focus groups while we were doing design. And, we would do all of these focus groups, and everything user-facing, she weighed in on. So for example, we have a very bright white on black display in the Kanega watch. And the reason for that is we had done the engineering thing. We had a very low power display. It's all about power. And it was great. We thought it was great. Everything was great. And then my mom pulls me aside and she goes, Jeannie Ann, I can't see that. And I'm like, no, Mom, you didn't tell me. Well, my mom had macular degeneration. Age-related macular degeneration affects about 35% of the post-80 population. So it's not that uncommon. Mm-hmm. And that means you can't see unless it's very, very contrasted. Mm-hmm. And so at the time, all of the display companies were chasing me going, we've got the greatest color display, 16 million colors. And I'm like, I don't care. I only want black and white, and I want it to be very bright, very bright. And so in the end, we actually had to go get a custom display built.
Okay. I want to wind back a little bit, because you're getting here into production stuff, which is exciting. But and I want to come back to that. But so you go, okay, we're going to start this. Did you start putting your own capital into this? Do you think I'm going to go and raise some money to get this going? Because I have a friend of mine who has built a hardware company, and he was saying that hardware is very, very hard and very costly. So how did you get initially started?
Yeah, so it is true that hardware is hard and hardware is costly. There are definitely some things that you can do to somewhat mitigate that. So back to the founding story. I recruited my co-founder, who's actually been with me at this point now in multiple companies for 24 years, I think. So I pulled him out, and we actually bootstrapped for the first 8 months. And during that time, we built some prototypes because, again, remember, nobody had a smartwatch.
Yeah.
Pebble had just created one,
I remember that.
but it was tied to your phone. And so if you were going to have to do Bluetooth to a phone, that was not going to work for an 80-year-old. Just not happening. So we needed cellular, Wi-Fi, GPS, all in the watch. And so question number one to the engineer is, can it be done? And the answer was, yes, it can. Okay, now we got to raise some money and make it look pretty, because I'm telling you what, those prototypes were ugly.
Yeah. And again, people, you can't put too much of a finer point on that, because now you could go to Alibaba and you could find a bajillion smart watches. And yeah, they're not going to be good, but I'm saying that the production has kind of been refined. The displays have been refined. And you could then find someone and say, okay, I want it like this. And you can make it how you want. But back then, no one was doing that. It wasn't that level.
Yeah, and even if you tried to do it now, you can't do it. And so we can go into that if you want to. But yeah, so I started raising money. So I did the usual thing. I laid out my business plan. Here are the rounds I think I need. Here's how much money I think it's going to take. By the way, I was thinking I would need about 33 million in capital. I've raised 20. And
That was the first round.
No, in total.
Okay, I was going to say.
Total.
Yeah.
Total. And I had somebody tell me, 33 is way too much. You're crazy. Now, for the semiconductor companies, we raised over $100 million. Okay. So, all right. So 33 was felt to be way too much. And I laid it out in Series Seed, what would be a pre-seed today, or maybe a pre-seed, was supposed to be $3 million. And I'm thinking, okay, I've sold 2 semiconductor companies above water. I know VCs. I've raised VC money. I'll be able to close this in 3 or 4 months. 9 months later, I closed my first $500,000 from an angel.
Wow.
Exactly.
It's a
Wow.
slog.
Yes, it was quite the shock. And so, unlike the semiconductor companies were all VC, in Unali, where we only have one VC, True Wealth Ventures, everything else is family offices, angels, and angel groups.
Why was that, do you think, that it was hard to... Was it that you didn't communicate your message? People didn't understand that well? They weren't willing to take a risk on that type of thing at that time?
Certainly for VCs, there's always the hardware is hard, right? Nobody wants to actually have to deal with the possibility that you get things wrong and now you've got inventory that you have to throw away. And that's totally true. That actually goes back to how is it that you build a hardware company without blowing through hundreds of millions of dollars? And the answer to that is, by the way, that you build things in small batches, mostly by hand, until you know you've got it right.
So lean methodology, lean manufacture.
Super lean, but the hardware version of lean.
Yeah, because there's the lean methodology, if you've heard of it before, but like the lean startup by Reese, that comes from lean manufacturer, I believe, from a car manufacturer.
Actually, he's got a quote in there that says this does not apply to hardware.
Did he really?
He really does.
I know he says
I could go
came
find
from
it in the
car
book.
manufacturing, but I wasn't sure about hardware. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't. And the reason of that is because, well, the first part of that is because if you're looking at a physical product, and you're really talking about, hey, at scale, am I going to make lots of money? Then you believe that you need to start at scale.
Yeah, I see.
And the answer is that is the quickest way to waste a lot of money on inventory, because you don't know you've got product market fit until you actually grow to scale. And it's really expensive actually building scale. So today, with the Conago watches that we have, we actually build them by hand still, because no manufacturer would actually do volume manufacturing for us unless we were doing at least 100,000 units a year. We're not doing that. That's an awful lot of money raised to do that. You're not going to get there on $20 million over 10 years, right?
No.
So we don't do that. We just grow one bit at a time. And, earlier, late last year, now I guess, New York Times Wirecutter named the Kanega watch as the best medical alert on the go in the U.S., bar none.
Amazing.
Right? And we've done it on a very cash efficient mechanism. I don't know how much money Whoop has raised, but last I looked, it was hundreds of millions, right? And I've raised 20. Okay. We started at the same time, by the way.
Okay. That's crazy. So you got that founding team, you got the first 500K after a little while of slogging and knocking on doors. I say shaking hands and kissing babies for a bit. So that was pretty demoralizing, but you obviously kind of had conviction, and that's why you're going to keep going.
Yeah.
You built the prototype, and then your mum helped you get it into people's hands, and you felt like you had a good product. And you patented a lot of things as well, right?
Yeah, we did.
Without day one, that was like, that's in your blood by the sound of it.
Yeah, it is. Well, and also it's so after 30 years in semiconductors is a little bit different. You patent everything in semiconductors, not necessarily because you're going to go sue everybody, but instead because when they come to see you, then you end up negotiating cross-licensing, and off everybody goes. So it's kind of, having your patent portfolio is a little bit like mutually assured destruction, kind of set up in the world. It's different in other areas, but because of that, we did some very key patents early.
Yeah. And one of those was your batteries, wasn't it?
Yeah, the batteries is a big part of it. There's some other ones too that are very fundamental.
And if you, obviously hardware being different to semiconductors, is it more of a defensible thing than a licensing thing in that world?
Ask me in a couple of years.
Okay.
We're all still growing and learning. We'll see.
Yeah,
we'll
but
see.
because you guys have a subscription model as well, it's more about the subscription model, I presume, than the hardware sale.
Exactly. Yes. In fact, so when we started selling, so the first generation watch, by the way, this is the second one that I'm wearing today. Cool. First generation watch was 3G cellular. Okay. Mm-hmm. We had cellular in a watch before Apple did. It was made out of medical grade stainless steel because it was a medical alert. It was absolutely indestructible, and it weighed a quarter pound. That's way too heavy for your average 80-year-old, right? And so it didn't take very long. I knew once we got there, I was like, okay, this is not product market fit, but I'm going to go ahead and take it to market because you can only go so far with focus groups and asking opinions. In the end, you need to see who's going to pay for it and who's going to keep it, right? Mm-hmm. So I went ahead and went to market for about 6 months, and then I pulled it and we had some customers that we kept, but the rest of the time we were working on redesigning the second generation. So what I'm wearing today is actually lighter than an Apple Watch. And it's got colors. It's not medical grade stainless steel. All of that's very different. So you put
cellular in it. So you had to do a deal with did it have a full SIM card in it? Because I don't know if they had nano SIMs then, but you had a SIM card in it. Was it an eSIM?
Actually, we've been embedded SIM from the beginning. So
that's fairly
MFF2,
new as well to market.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. So it's actually a chip. It's not. There's no card because we're waterproof. Right?
Yeah.
So if you take it off to go into the bathroom or shower, which is your most vulnerable time in my demographic, that doesn't help any, right? So you wear it in the shower.
That's awesome. So you had to have cellular. You had to, because if someone's out of the house as well and they fall,
exactly,
we get alert. So is there like a accelerometer in there as well, or do you have to press it? So tell us about some of the features that are in it today.
So we have that battery system in the band, and so you have a total of 4 what we call battery pods. 2 are on the watch at any one time, and you just swap them. The watch will tell you when, but we've learned it's best to make a habit of doing it every day. It lasts longer than that, but just do it every day. And then...
Do they have a little dock that they go into?
Yeah, they have a little charger, right? So there's 2 on the charger, 2 on the watch. You just swap them out, no big deal. You speak to the watch, it speaks to you. So let's see how we do in picking it up with the microphone.
Yeah, it should be okay.
Fred Astaire, get help.
I think I heard you ask for help. I am contacting the operator. Press Press the crown button once if you do not need help, and I will cancel the call.
That's important.
Call ended.
What did you call him? Freddie Stare.
Yes, my mom named him. And actually, you can tell by that example, I mean, he's loud.
Yeah.
That speaker is a full watt. Sorry to be a nerd, but that's important because remember I said old people are like young people, except we can't see, we can't hear, and we can't touch. So it's a very loud speaker, and it's not touch-driven, it's speech-driven. You talk to him, he talks to you.
Okay. And so did that take much testing? Because again, back there, Siri still isn't very good, and I don't think we'll see.
Siri didn't exist, right?
Didn't exist.
No.
They acquired that, I think, didn't they? But yeah, it didn't exist. And I'm trying to think if there's any. Again, I'm always trying to think back of what technology existed to give us an idea of what it looked like then. Because now you're like, well, we have this and we have that. Like, but no, we didn't. And even now, you have defensible, unique product.
Yes.
But it's interesting to think how forward-thinking you were.
Yeah, and I remember, I mean, one of the things that changed in between my last semiconductor company, Luminary Micro, the one we sold to TI, and starting Unaliware was the rise of the pitch competitions and, you know, the 1 and 3 and 5 and 7 and 10-minute pitch and all that rot. Mm-hmm. And I had done an accelerator thing with somebody that now I can't name. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we're practicing our pitches. And I said, and in a classically styled watch, you talk to it talks to you. And the guy goes, stop, stop, stop. Who do you think you are? Google? And I'm going, I told him that I've sold 2 semiconductor companies. I know exactly how we do this. We do this kind of embedded speech all the time with phonemes. It's not large language model speech, but, you know, my demographic doesn't need that. They just need help, call the operator. What time is it? What day is it? I'm done.
Yeah.
That's all.
Because actually, Fitbit were one of the success stories that come out of Techstars. I think Techstars invested in them. They were one of the first kind of pitch accelerator people. And Brad Feld, who is one of the Techstars people, he was a little bit chubby. And then when he had his Fitbit, he lost a lot of weight. And I think he kind of was a big fan of it, and they were a big investor in Fitbit. Interesting. So yeah, because that wasn't around, and it was. I think there was like probably voicing. I think I had a TV. Maybe had like it's crap. It was rubbish.
Yeah, it was embedded voice. Those were the first ones. And see, actually, so a lot of those applications were using the microcontrollers we were developing.
Yeah.
So of course I knew what was there and what was doable, and so like I said, then we had cellular in the watch, we have Wi-Fi in the watch, we have GPS in the watch. And then we also have Bluetooth. We don't talk about this very much because the real intent of the Bluetooth is actually for telemedicine solutions. Mm-hmm. So then it gets into the whole FDA thing, but we're class 2 medical devices. And if we have any physiological biometrics, then we have to be class 3. It's the reason that the Apple Watch goes to 911. The thing that's different with us is we go to medical alarm call centers, and they do direct dispatch. So that means that the ambulance person or the fireman who comes to see you knows what's special about you. Hey, you're going to see Jean Ann. She has diabetes. She's allergic to aspirin. She's got a safety key underneath the planter to the left of the door. Don't break down the door.
So
can't do that in 911.
Are those your call centers, or there's some of their services you?
We use an outsourced call center. Yeah.
So if you describe what you think you are, like McDonald's would say they're, real estate, not necessarily fast food. How would you guys maybe say yourself? Are you a medical device company? Are you? What are you?
We extend independence with dignity.
I like it. And do you think there'll be more things you will venture into using, like, low Bluetooth, like low emitting Bluetooth sensors for door opening on smart home, just to give a bit more tracking, or are you doing that stuff already?
So I think that you'll see extensions, not as much in general use, but more in hospital at home, remote patient monitoring, remote therapeutic monitoring, in visually impaired or auditorily impaired populations. You can see some of those connections with, lights that flash when your TTY phone is ringing. We can do things along those lines. So that's where I think you'll see some of those extensions.
Do you think you'll see it as a partnership opportunity, or you see more product in the horizon more?
Oh, totally a partnership opportunity. I mean, from my perspective, I'm all about independence with dignity for old people, right? I mean, there's 70 million people above the age of 65 in the U.S., and the adoption of medical alerts is less than 7% of the population. So you go, why? And the answer is they're ugly, they're stigmatizing, right? So like one of my wearers says, I love my Conaga watch because I don't want to wear a garage door opener around my neck. Mm-hmm. And it was like, oh my God, that's just so great.
Mm-hmm. You need that on the website. Yeah. So you don't think will you create other products, or you think, you're just going to keep refining the watch form factor?
Until there's something else that allows me to do our mission, which is independence with dignity, I suspect we'll continue to refine the watch form factor and our ability to provide independent safety to vulnerable populations, right? So when we first started, I would get requests for, comment about the next generation of smartwatches, and it's like, I don't care. I don't care about a smartwatch. The only thing that I care about is that's the form factor that allowed me to build something that could keep my mom safe 24/7 every single day, wherever she went, when she was asleep, when she was awake, period. Mm-hmm. And you can't do that with a pendant because of the choking hazard.
Yep.
You can't do that with any of those systems that are at home because she was totally cognitively capable. She went out and about.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, I haven't asked you really any questions about how you compare to an Apple Watch. Because for me personally, as a technologist, I looked at the website like, well, obviously it's different. It just happens to have numbers on it that tell you the time, and that's about it. Like, it's beyond that, it doesn't make a ton of sense to sort of ask you. I think it's a silly question to ask you, how are they different? Or why wouldn't I just get an Apple Watch? To me, it seems kind of obvious why, this
it's
is
the number one question I get. It's usually the very first question I get.
Yeah, I can see why, but I'm also like, not really. Again, maybe it's just because I'm coming from a technology point of view. I see why it's very, very different.
Yeah.
So, what was my next question going to be? It was going to be around the future for you guys, and maybe let's start with distribution today. Like distribution, how are you selling stuff? Are you selling it for the website? Are you selling it through elderly care homes, or what's the?
So we're mostly digital. So Google, Facebook, Bing, but also affiliates and referrers. So affiliate advertisers, and then where you see, home health care agencies or senior communities, those are most often referrers.
So do you see maybe a distribution channel in insurance companies or things like that?
I do. It's really kind of interesting what the insurance guys look at and what they choose to support and what they choose not to support. But yes, I can totally see, distribution through insurance. I can see distribution through consumer health, right? Because right now we're what's called private pay. Insurance doesn't pay for us. Mm-hmm. And so if you think about a CVS, a Walgreens, a Boots, a Rite Aid, right? It's a natural distribution, a Best Buy with their focus on seniors, right? Those are natural extensions for avenues to sell.
And you're not in retail at the moment. It's all through the, you say,
right now it's
online.
All directly. Yeah, everything comes out of, because
good profits.
Well, and part of why that matters to us is because every Conaga watch is shipped programmed for you. Okay. You take it out of the box, it simply works. You put the batteries in, Fred pops up and he goes, "Hi, my name is Fred Astaire. I'm a waterproof medical alert device." And he talks you through how to use them.
So what kind of calibration's happening then to make me feel like it's that personal fit?
Well, one of the biggest, so there's a couple of big ones. One, we get your information and register you with the medical alarm call center. So that when your watch sends an alarm, we know it's you. "Hi, Jean Ann, are you okay?" Right? Another one is the bane of all consumer electronics companies, Wi-Fi. So we get your SSID and password. We program the watch for you. And like all consumer electronics companies, 50% of people get it wrong, and so then we have to work with them afterward and get it all pushed down over cellular.
Yeah.
And then also for a lot of our demographic, we actually pre-program medication reminders.
Nice.
For them, and that's, again, that's an important part of the life cycle.
So the medication reminders, how are you getting that data programmed in? Because normally, if I, again, a technologist, I'd probably use. I mean, Apple have started to get the reminders in there for medication. So are you building a sidecar app that lives with the caregiver or son or daughter?
So we do have a portal on our website. I would say less than 0.25% of people use it. What they actually do is they call us up and they go, hey, my meds have changed. And we program it, we push it down. Because unlike any of your devices that says you're going to get updated tonight, you're going to get whatever, we never do any of that to them. They have no idea when the software gets updated. We do it when they're asleep. We know when they're asleep because we can tell, right? And so we can push changes anytime we want to.
Yeah, that's wicked. And so you've got accelerometer in there for full. They can press the button, and then there must be a heart rate monitor or something in there.
No, that's that biologic sensors.
So that creates an issue with HIPAA, or
no,
tell me
it's
a bit more about that.
FDA.
It's
the
an FDA thing.
So we are under the FDA.
Yeah.
You got class 1, 2, 3. In class 2, there's a special classification of class 2 called emergency services. And what that means is if you're class 2 emergency services, you bypass 911 and directly dispatch. So that's what we do through our call centers. That means that you can pass along that information about Jean Ann, she has diabetes, blah, blah, blah. If you are class 2 emergency services, though, you may not have any physiological monitoring.
That's weird to me.
Well, so here's my simple engineer's way of saying what's the difference between class 1 and 2 and 3, especially 2 and 3. In class 2, the doctor still makes the decisions. In class 3, the doctor's being bypassed. Okay?
Yeah.
So class 3 would be, pacemaker is class 3, right? The pacemaker is going to decide, hey, I need to, reset the rhythm, or if you have the one with the auto start, I'm gonna auto start. Boom, yeah. So if you combine something like oxygen level or heart rate or something with emergency services, then that means that the watch is going to decide your heart rate is unexpected, and therefore I'm going to dispatch.
Yeah.
So there was no doctor in the loop at all. And that makes it class 3.
Yeah.
Now, that's my way of describing it. They have lots of words.
Yeah, and these are not your rules. I'm
No,
interested
that's the
by
FDA.
it. And it'd be interesting because I get that would be an issue that like, oh, your heart's not doing the right thing. We're going to make a decision. But it'd be kind of cool if they could have that information. Like even if it wasn't determined off, oh, this heart rate's dropped below, call out. Maybe they still have to press it or whatever. So what happens when they have a fall then? They still have to.
No, they don't, actually. So falling is not considered a physiological monitoring system. So it's very FDA.
Yeah.
So actually, in the Kaniga Watch's case, when we think we've detected a fall, we actually will ask permission to, first, it vibrates on your wrist like a cell phone on silent, asking permission to talk to you. If you give him permission to talk out loud, he'll talk to you. If you press the button, he'll only show it on the watch display, okay? And then he'll tell you what the scoop is, and you can decide, you can cancel, just like you saw me cancel. If you don't respond to a fall, a detected fall, then it escalates to this really horrible screeching noise to make sure that if there's anybody around, or if you just can't hear the watch over the TV, that you're going to hear it. If that still doesn't work, we connect you with the medical alarm operator. They can hear what's going on. And so if they hear, a party in progress, they're like, they're fine. And if they don't hear anything or they just hear the TV, they're like, they're not fine. So we're one of the only solutions, maybe the only solution, that automatically detects a fall while minimizing the false detection of falls and the dispatch of emergency services.
Yeah, my wife left her phone on the car, and it flew off the car. and it went, "Oh, you're in a car accident," which her phone was, but she wasn't, luckily. So I got a call, and they were going to dispatch people out for that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what does the future hold?
Well, I mean, we're scaling right now. We came to market with this generation of the Conego watch in mid 2020, and we've been more than doubling revenue every year since. So we're just scaling and growing and heading toward, the right exit point, because it has been a long journey for some of our investors, and that's what comes next.
The exit, the right exit.
The right exit.
And then for you, is that back to scuba diving?
Yes.
Or you back to scuba diving?
Back to scuba diving.
Is there enough of that in Austin, or are we going to lose you?
So I'll come back to Austin in between dives, like I did before.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's exciting.
I have over 1,000 dives in Lake Travis. I don't need any more.
There's enough. Yeah. There's only so many you can do, I'm sure, on Lake Travis. So you're going to try and raise some more capital before that liquidity event, or it's just scale at this point?
We are raising a last little bit, and then we're still scaling, and that's the whole part of scaling, right? If you could afford we could scale more slowly and do it all on our own dime, but that's where capital comes in. You can scale more quickly, and that's where we are.
So do you think you'll reach that? I think, remembering back, it's 30 million you projected. So will it be that you'll hit probably raise about 30 million total by the time?
No, we're going to be well under that. We're going to be well under. But then again, at that time, I thought we would be in market and exiting within 7 years, and it's been 10, almost 11. So one of my angel investors put it the right way, I think. He goes, you can be funded to develop, or you can develop to funding. The latter takes longer and costs more. And that's been this particular journey for this company.
Sometimes that's just what you have to do. You've got to do what you got to do, unfortunately.
Thank God I'm the most stubborn person you'll ever meet.
Well, it was a pleasure meeting officially the most stubborn person you'll ever meet. Thank you so much for your time today. I really
Thank you
appreciate
very much for having me.
Thank you.